Hi, you're listening to the imentor podcast. I'm Chani, your host for today. In today's episode, we'll be talking with Dato Brian Tan about business in the days of COVID-19 and how to move beyond this time. For those who are not familiar with Dato Brian, he's the president and CEO of Fumakilla Malaysia Berhad and Fumakilla Asia Sendirian Berhad. He has a demonstrated history of working in the FMCG industry in the ASEAN region. Welcome to the show, Dato. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Chanyi. It is indeed my pleasure to be a part of your imentor program, and I'm very honored to be here today. So I hope by whatever that I will share today will benefit all our listeners in terms of management during COVID-19. I'm just sharing my experience and I'm still learning. So if there are also things that I should learn from our audience, I will be very pleased to receive those learnings as well.
I'm sure they'll be interested from what we're going to share. So, Dato, you've been in many business industry over the course of many years, right? So, how has COVID changed the way you have handled your business? Could you maybe give us an idea of how it looked like before and after the pandemic?
Okay, actually in all our business plans, we have never forecasted for COVID-19 to happen. We have never put in our business plan that there will be this pandemic that will last for 18 months already by today in Malaysia, since March last year. So during COVID-19, the major changes that happened is the implementation of SOPs for our operations to continue operating as we were classified as essential goods. And these operations have to adhere to a set of very tight rules to prevent COVID-19 infection in the operations. And that became our top priority. So the major thing that changed was such implementations of SOP, and with that came along no face-to-face meetings. Company has to transform from the regular operations into a virtual platform, which we call work from home ready or WFH ready. So the balancing act for running a business changed during COVID-19. The conflict between productivity and SOP. In actual fact, when you implement SOPs of COVID-19 prevention in your operations, you actually reduce productivity. And we have to balance now this SOP versus productivity. So the major challenge today that we face is the unpredictable disruption of operations. You cannot predict when your organization will be inflicted with COVID-19 cases. Or you cannot predict also whether your suppliers, your supply chain, or your customers would actually be faced with a disruption of operations due to COVID-19. So this unpredictable disruption becomes a norm today. Every day we plan for tomorrow and the day after, but we cannot predict for a very long time how we want to manage the operations without disruption due to COVID-19. So in a nutshell, the major, most important element would be to preserve cash flow. When you have disrupted operations, then you may have disrupted sales. Disrupted sales will disrupt your cash flow. So cash flow preservation becomes the underlying important agenda for the company to actually sustain and sail out of COVID-19. But COVID-19. You asked me just now, before and after. So before COVID-19, although workplace safety was the priority, management of risks are visible. Today, we are managing an invisible risk. COVID-19 is not visible. But the days before COVID-19, most of our risks were risks that were visible and predictable. And business those days before COVID-19 relied heavily on face-to-face meetings, and for this, traveling was one of the most essential part of building a business together. So high focus was on technological improvements and also productivity measurements during the days of pre-COVID. But now, high focus is on SOPs and safety of the company. So, in the days of pre-COVID, our attention was all on elements of the unpredictability, but things that we could forecast or put into a forecasting model. For example, market changes or this competitor behavior or your consumer behavior. These are things that you can focus on in your planning because you can predict it's also going to move this way or move that way. It's predict lah. Whether your prediction is correct or not doesn't really matter because most of our predictions are all for planning purposes. So those days we predict many things when this product will go end of life, when we are going to launch a new product, and today we are predicting elements like disruption of operations due to COVID-19. Yeah, so earlier I said during COVID, preservation of cash flow is very important. 4 days of COVID, to keep idling cash in the company was unacceptable. Cash had to be put into good use to further develop the business into something bigger, develop your operations into something more profitable or expansion of market. So idling cash was not acceptable pre-COVID. But during COVID, companies tend to keep some cash because you cannot predict your operations for the next week or the next month. So these would be the main differences of how businesses have changed and how I have managed the business differently during the days of COVID compared to before.
So I guess like the biggest changes is preserving cash flow, right? So how do you feel things will be like moving forward? Or will you say that because of COVID, this kind of changes will be continued moving on after the pandemic?
Some of these changes will not reverse back. Some of the changes will still reverse back. But in the context of what I feel, the biggest changes that we need to react to today would be the change of fighting this invisible risk. Safety from risk become top priority, the risk of COVID. And learning about the virus that we have today, COVID-19, it takes a lot of time to learn how this virus is spread, how you manage your social distancing, how you prevent it by sanitization and wearing face masks, etc. And obtaining all the on-time information where the clusters are actually coming from in our community, where to avoid which factory or which operations or which company is having COVID. We should actually have this on-time information to manage our quarantine of our employees. So these are things, I think it will not be back to normal so fast. Even after COVID-19 is termed as an endemic, we will still need to manage this kind of information and to develop this kind of knowledge for further SOP maintenance. It will continue for a while. I predict at least for 1 or 2 years more.
So I guess even though like now borders are lifted, life kind of goes back to normal, certain things is still here to stay. So could you maybe elaborate on some of the things that you are actually proud that you did during the pandemic?
Well, the things that I'm particularly, not to say proud, but I think we all did well, was to keep the company safe from COVID-19. I think this was something that I feel it is an accomplishment. Knowing about the virus so little at the beginning. And today we know a lot more about the virus, but in the beginning, number of cases was so few. Today we are having 10 to 20,000 cases a day. Yeah, so keeping the company safe, keeping the operations running without any significant risk exposure is an accomplishment, and I actually credit this to my entire operating management, because everyone has to have the similar level of sensitivity to COVID-19 risk. So this is one of the major accomplishment that I think is worth mentioning. And the second thing that is a quick transformation was the ability of the company to enable non-production staff to work from home. It went on a quick transformation to be work from home ready company, because imagine this at the beginning, not everyone in the operation would have a notebook computer, but they would have a desktop, because bigger monitor and easier handling of the keyboard. But when the pandemic started, since March last year, we actually transformed a lot of these desktops to notebook computers, and we also assisted many of our employees to be able to have better Wi-Fi connection and better internet connection. So the third thing that I think is very important that we managed to accomplish is the enhanced communication using modern technology. WhatsApp, Zoom, so emails to actually get things done has become a new norm that we can be all proud of. I'm sure we are not the only company who managed to attain this. Many companies in the country, in Penang, would have also transformed themselves to be a work from home ready company, and then using all the modern technology to run the operations while keeping the production operation safe from COVID-19.
This might be a bit hard to answer because, but is there anything that you felt like you could have done better, knowing what you know now, almost like 2 years into COVID?
Yeah, actually, things that I could have done better, I also do not know what they would be actually, because every day you will see new things and you will learn new things about COVID-19. And today, what we are actually trying to learn would be the effect of vaccination on preventing COVID-19. So operations like my company, with more than 90% vaccinated, we are now observing the situation to actually raise our dependence on vaccination. Right? We are still keeping our pre-vaccination SOPs, but everyone is hoping that after fully vaccinated, we can actually manage the operations in a more pre-COVID way. But we are still learning. So I can't really explain what would have been done better, but on a personal basis, I think I could have exercised more during this almost 2 years. I did not expect this pandemic to be lasting so long.
Yeah.
And now the norm is to sit in front of the computer and go on video almost at the start of the workday to the end of the workday, sitting in front of the PC, no walking around, no movement. I could have exercised more. If I knew it will be so long, I would actually allocate more time for my discipline exercise.
Maybe you can like walk around holding your phones up, like incorporate exercise into meetings and all that.
Yeah, it's not easy moving around takes me away from the focus that I need with my documents at the site.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Yeah.
But business-wise, right? Were there any things that made you upset during the COVID-19 period?
Yeah, when COVID-19 happens, there are things that make me worry. Really so much upset. But upset would be about people who breach the COVID-19 SOP. I get upset when I see someone wearing the mask the wrong way. I get upset when I see people moving about without masks. I get upset. That one I really get upset because I think this is exposing themselves and the people around them to the COVID-19 risk. So I get upset. But other things that happen during the COVID-19 period that gives me the worry, I worry about supply chain disruption. Because to produce a single finished product, there are many inputs that go into that product in order to make it a complete finished product, and inputs come from different places, from different manufacturers. So, like for example, the MCO that we just had from June this year. Certain states were on phase 1, certain states were on phase 2. Some companies can operate, some companies cannot operate. Then this actually create disruption to the supply chain because we have suppliers in Selangor, we have suppliers in Kuala Lumpur, we have suppliers in Johor, and we are based in Penang. So when Penang go into phase 2, we are happy, yeah, we are in phase 2. But then we still have suppliers in phase 1, some unable to operate. So we have supply chain disruption. So it worries me when such things happen. So we have to overcome it by other means. And it also worries me when there are retailers disruption, because in the retail segment, I'm sure you have also seen notices being circulated around our social media. Hypermarkets closed for 7 days. This hypermarket, that hypermarket, then you start to wonder, have I been to that hypermarket or not? But to me, it disrupts the logistics because we make deliveries to such retail outlets. And it worries me when things like that happen, because then I have to plan for diversion of cargo and all that. So these are main things that would actually give me sleepless nights. Yeah. But I get upset when people break SOP. When I see people not wearing masks, I feel like tapping their shoulder and say, hello, can you put on your mask properly? Especially those who like to put the mask under the nose. Yeah.
It's like they cover their mouth but not the nose.
Yeah. Better don't wear like that.
Yeah, that's true. In times like this, right, I'm assuming it's not easy to push through when it comes to business. Like you have to consider a lot of part, like when you say like logistics and all this. And considering first thing on other people's mind are their health. So what helped you to get through this time and push through?
So to implement certain decisions during these COVID-19 times, I guess this is what you meant by push through, meaning to convince people to follow my strategy, to convince my team to implement what I want to do, although health is their main priority.
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing is for me to demonstrate that I'm a caring person, that I care for the safety of my employees. So when I demonstrate that I'm a caring leader in the company, the organization can actually feel it. They can actually smell my intention. Yeah, because in the days of pre-COVID, they already have worked with me, my supply chain, my customers, and my organization. They already know what are the usual decisions that I make based on what major assumptions. And today, the major assumption will be to take care of everybody's safety. Yeah, so being caring is one of the most important trait that I have to show so that my organization can smell my intention. And I have to be consistent. I have to be consistent when I say safety is the priority. So if I am consistent, they will always remember that the decisions that I make are always made on the consideration of everybody's safety first and not profit first. Because if I start to be inconsistent by showing in certain areas of my decisions profit before safety, then I am not consistent. Then people will doubt my decision making. And the third thing that is very important is the clear communication. The clear communication of all the decisions that are made during this time. The directions must be logical. Logical, meaning it has to be logical so that the whole organization will know my next move. It's very important for the organization to be able to predict my next move. Actually, you know, you put yourself in this similar situation. If you can predict your boss's next move, your job becomes easier because you know how the decision will be made for the next step. You can prepare for it. Yeah, so the organization should not be guessing, hey, what is Brian's next move? What do you think he will do? Then a lot of time is wasted on this unproductive analysis. They should be analyzing what is my next move based on their ability to predict. Then they can start working on the next direction before even I say out what is the next thing to do. Yeah. So in the end, we have to be bold in making the final decision because the ultimate final decision will be the one that determines the fate of the organization in the next step. And therefore, by making that bold final decision, I must also show my whole organization that I am not afraid to take responsibility for that decision. If something fails, I will not blame anyone. I will only blame my decision and I take full responsibility for that decision. Yeah, so this would be how I convince my entire organization that their safety is my priority and all my decisions are for the sustainability of the company, putting safety of everyone at the priority. Because at the end of the day, we also need salary to continue living. We need the company to continue operation so that we continue to have a job to actually continue living. So our balance is livelihood versus safety. Yeah. So this is how I push through all the decisions during this period of time.
I'm sure your organization are very lucky to have you, Dato, to lead them and guide them. All right.
I'm also lucky to be working with them. I'm fortunate that I'm working in this organization.
Let's just have one last question before we end this interview. To end with, what gets you excited about the work you do now? Like, what brings you joy in your work? What makes you feel good?
Feel good factor. Okay,
Yeah.
by now, you should already know most of the people in Intellect who have interacted with me for the last few sessions would know I like to talk. I like to talk and I like to explain things. So you know that I do all this because of my passion to coach. I always want to share some experience, some knowledge with the younger generation to help groom them for further career growth or also groom them for personal maturity. So I like coaching. So in this context, when Intellect approached me to be part of this imentor program, without hesitation, I actually said, okay, yeah, the word imentor is actually related very much to my passion, is to see how I can help coach the younger generation to actually do great things in their life, not necessarily work-wise. It can be family-wise, it can be from any other angle. But work-wise, what satisfies me would be when goals are achieved. when targets are achieved. My excitement is actually great when I am winning. So if I win, it gives me this great satisfaction about my work. So I like to win. So I like this competitive environment that we are working in. In any organization, you have targets, you also have goals. So you are given those targets and goals to achieve it. And achieving it means you win the game. Yeah. So every chapter of my work life, I like to win. But I must say so that I sometimes lose as well. Yeah. So when I lose, the excitement would be to be able to rise up and continue the race again, change the direction and try winning. Yeah. So this would be my joy, to be able to overcome areas that I have lost. But eventually in my organization, my joy is seeing the younger generation taking up roles and responsibility and succeeding in accomplishing the task that is given to them and exceeding the goals that they have actually set for themselves. So seeing success of the next generation is also my joy in the work that I'm doing today.
It's been a real pleasure to have you with us, Dato Brian. Thank you for taking the time to share.
Thank
And
you.
to the audience, thank you for listening to the show this week. If you enjoyed this episode of iMentor, please do like this post and stay tuned to our Facebook page as we are looking to post more of this kind of content in the future. You could also leave us a comment below for any suggestion to help us make the show better for you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Stay safe. Take care.